Welcome, current and future friends. Pull up a chair and take your place at the table as together we embark on a journey through a dark and mysterious place known as the World of Darkness. You are listening to Tabletop by Night, an exploratory podcast where each season we dive into one of the many ways a bunch of geeks can choose to spend their precious free time around a table. I am GreyDMs, your nocturnal navigator in these dark and foreboding streets. As always, I am joined by my sanguine sidekick and co-host, Owen.
Hello.
We gathered together these dark and often lonely nights to undertake an exploration of the lore, history, and themes contained in the tabletop role-playing game Vampire the Masquerade. This being our inaugural session, we begin with a question that lies at the beating heart of this expedition. What is Vampire the Masquerade and why should you play it?
You shouldn't.
There we go. Cut. We're done. It's great. We have a reason to. So does that mean you want to play D&D?
No, I want to play vampire.
Okay. So if you haven't guessed by that absolutely not scripted intro that did not take multiple times for me to get out.
No, not even 3 or 4.
Oh, no. This season, which is our first season, so congratulations to us.
What a milestone.
We achieved the first step. We're coming to sit together and talk about a game that is both familiar and new to us.
I mean, we have a lot of experience with it, but it's been changing. So, yes.
And it's also a aspect of the game that we didn't play originally. So most of that experience is something different.
True.
So if this doesn't make sense to you, we are talking about a game called Vampire the Masquerade. So Vampire the Masquerade is currently being produced or published by a company called Paradox Interactive.
That sounds like a familiar company.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. I mean, isn't Paradox Interactive also a video game
I think so. I think they're
company?
So according to their own statement here, this gives you a little idea of what type of a tabletop role-playing game this is. You are a vampire struggling for survival, supremacy, and your own fading humanity, afraid of what you're capable of and fearful of the inhuman conspiracies that surround you. As a vampire, you suffer the pangs of the hunger, the relentless and terrible thirst for human blood. If you refuse to deal with it, it will overcome your mind and drive you to terrible acts to slake it. You walk this razor's edge every night. This is the original and ultimate role-playing game of personal and political horror.
I mean, what's not to like?
So, as Owen here has said already, we do have some familiarity with Vampire, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, we've played it once or twice.
A few times.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike many people who probably get involved with D&D or Pathfinder or one of the, I don't want to say traditional, but...
I mean, they are more traditional. I mean, I yes, there was such things around before D&D even existed, but D&D pretty much supplanted all of that, I feel.
Yeah. So unlike most people who find their kind of way into the hobby via that, we had a vampiric storyteller.
Yes.
Who drew us in with promises of a dark, forbidding story that didn't involve his girlfriend's whims or his cheating son of a bitch at the table.
Yeah, or his extra, not so much marital, but extra relationship situation that slowly panned out over the time that we played this game, and to our horror.
I guess it can be said that Vampire is going to be dramatic one way or another.
Manufactured drama or not.
So, Vampire the Masquerade, which is its V5, the 5th edition, or V5 as everyone online keeps referring to it, because they don't want to say 5th edition. It is a TTRPG. Ooh, say too much. It is a tabletop role-playing game in which you take on the role of a vampire, whether that be someone newly turned, possibly even detrimentally thin and new blood, or if you want to get into it and play someone who's a little bit more established, an older brooding figure.
Mm-hmm.
These things are all within the realm of the story. It takes place in a world called the World of Darkness.
And there's a lot more than just vampires.
Oh, yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. What is the World of Darkness, right? So everybody knows D&D has multiple different settings. You have the
different realms.
Yeah, the
different planes.
Same on the Forgotten Coast. It's not the Forgotten Ghosts.
Forgotten
The Forgotten Realms.
Yeah.
Eberron. Well, the Dragonlance setting, which I can't remember its original name now, but all these different locations, different settings that you could play D&D in, but they all kind of turn into high fantasy.
Yeah.
Sword and sorcery kind of things. The World of Darkness is much easier to get into in our opinions because it's very close to our own. It's
accessible in its familiarity.
Oh, yeah. So if you think of our world where the shadows are a little bit deeper, the plot's a little more sinister, and everything just a tad bit edgier and scarier at night. That is the World of Darkness. So very easy to convince people to play in, hop into a chair and sit down and scum around the dark alley streets of wherever city that you want to take your story to.
I mean, my opinion in it is it's a more social game than D&D is.
Oh, 100%.
There's manufactured or not, there's more drama happening on the tabletop. Combat's not the focus. Though, I mean, D&D, you have your bards and your, sorcerers and whatever trying to bed whatever's in front of them. But Vampire is more focused on the relationships of the people around. At least at our tabletop, it does.
I think in general, the game is meant to be that way. So while D&D basically its statement seems to be that you get to live your heroic fantasy, whatever complicated story that is. Vampire is kind of like you're trying to make the best out of a horrible situation. Mm. So inherently in that, there's less focus on you trying to figure out how can I get enough gold to buy the magic weapon, where the wizard in the castle is, and more like, please God, wizard, don't see me. I need all the friends I can get.
Yeah, I mean, depending upon your DM's style, the very first game is where am I going to sleep?
Mm-hmm. Starting a campaign as freshly embraced kindred, the word that they use for vampires, that's always a very interesting kind of start.
It's pretty much my favorite. I mean, in D&D, I always feel like it's, why are these people, getting together? Oh, there's the trope of, well, we all met up at an inn and the, innkeeper's got some job for us to do. Where Vampire, it's just like, I might not trust you guys, but we're not going to get through our first day together, if we don't trust each other a little bit and work together. I mean, I suppose you can, depending upon the DM's, rules, whatever, but it always just feels more organic to me.
I think it makes more sense that if you're interacting or you're playing as a character that is closer to you.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, it is in vampiric terms, you plus the beast inside wanting to, eat. It's easier to kind of be that character, right?
I feel attacked.
No, I think that there's a sideways ending there. I learned a really fantastic thing this week.
Yeah.
A professional DM, Brandon Lee Mulligan.
Mm-hmm.
He gave this great analogy that was more towards improv and theater of the mind, how we don't play characters. Our characters are not like basically, I think he said the characters are not opaque. They're translucent. They're more like stained glass with which we project ourselves through.
That's very good.
And I think that's how you have to play a character, because his take otherwise was if you try to play a gamey or gimmick character and you're not letting yourself shine through this lens, you end up with something that you don't like playing after a long period of time.
Yeah, I can feel that. That has happened in D&D. Yes. I created a character that was a gimmick, simply a gimmick, and extraordinarily outside of the way I enjoy playing the game, and I hated every minute of it.
It's funny that doesn't happen as much in Vampire, even though you could, but
you very much could, but I feel like Vampire, the flaws are what holds everything together, and it's, even if you make a very one-note character, there's always something that can be, what's the word? Wow. Brain totally just shut off. Something that can be taken advantage of that, you weren't expecting. but everybody else can. Because I mean, it's in D&D, you can't help but make a well-rounded character unless you are multi-classing and doing stupid things. You can take all the worst spells, you can take all the worst feats, you're still going to have someone capable of doing something. Where in Vampire, you can have a guy that can crash through a wall, rip people in half, turn into a wolf, and then some skinny dude walks up and says, "Go home." And that guy's like, "Yes, master, I'm going to go home and lay in bed." And there's nothing he can do about it.
That is a good point too. So one of the negatives of Vampire is that the powers of the vampire, many of them need to be done by a trusted group of friends because they will make not happy situations occur.
Yeah, if people at your table have no goal other than to ruin the fun of someone else or just take advantage of them or just focus on showing how cool they are by, you know, going after the other people at the table, it's not going to be a good time for anybody. Like it's just pointless. Like you have to have people that at least get along, understand each other. And the people that are more experienced have to kind of take the hand of those less experienced and not take advantage of them until later, you know, once they're invested.
It does have the long con, it fits a lot better into Vampire than D&D.
Yeah.
D&D's, it's impressive if you can pull it off, if you have some great thing that's released, but like Vampire, it's basically expected. If you guys play more than a handful of sessions together, somebody has betrayal in the back, not necessarily even out of malice, just because that's the way you survive.
Yeah, and there's some goal that they have, and unfortunately you're the obstacle, or you're at least standing with the obstacle, which again, these are our experiences playing the game. Others might have different experiences playing the game, but I just feel that Vampire lends itself to scheming, and secrets are so much more fun in Vampire, and finding those secrets and, you know, exploiting those secrets. That's why I love it.
You could almost say that if you were trying to tell an analogy between board games, if D&D was something kind of structured like House on the Hill or like Zombicide or something that everybody's getting together and helping each other out, and maybe there's a little betrayal, but everybody's focused on the mission. Vampire is straight up like the werewolf, or like was it a coup? One of those like social deduction taking out of each other games.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we're doing a good job selling you guys that you want to play this, but it is very fun. Okay. There absolutely is something to be said for more straightforward games and getting into them. But if you embrace Vampire, not as just this place in which you can go fuck everybody over, but as this kind of very growing playground of social exploration,
it really simulates life, I guess you could say, like the reality of life. Because, you know, again, depending upon the DM you're playing with, your vampire might have to get a job. There's no real adventuring in this game unless, you know, something like that's set up. But the reality is you're a supernatural creature living in a non-supernatural focused world. And where there are vampires that have carved out their place, you know, they might own a business or something like that. Not everyone's going to have that chance, and you're operating on a different timeline than everyone else. So, you know, you're a night person now. You can't be out in the day. You can't do those things. Where D&D, you're a paladin, and you're just a paladin among many other paladins. You might have your exploits that you've done, but, you know, in the long run, you're a paladin, and you worship your god, and you do what your deity wants you to, and that's what you do. But everything's kind of right there and open for you. You might not have money, you might not have, you know, a purpose yet, but life is life. You know, you treat it just the same way, where in Vampire, everything is difficult. Unless you're one of those vampires that wakes up with a golden ticket. And
who would ever want to play one of those?
no, yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm on a different viewpoint of that. I think we definitely have our preferences for games.
We do. Like I see where you're coming from on a lot of, on D&D and things like that. And I don't dislike D&D. Like that's the big thing. I don't want anybody to think I dislike it. I just like I guess you don't like the spatial freedom that you get in playing Vampire, where you're just, your choices have a lot more outcome. I don't know. And so many things that I'm saying are tainted by who I play with. Everything is going to be different depending upon who you play with. So, I mean, there's probably a lot of people that have played Vampire and they're like, oh, it's just like D&D. So it's different.
Yeah, it should be noted that from our personal experience too, because we started with Vampire, we have heard people that have joined this group say that we play D&D differently because of Vampire.
Yeah, it is. Our D&D campaigns are, I don't want to say tainted, but they're definitely, hued, colored by our experience with Vampire.
There's often a lot more kind of like, oh, what do you want to do? Let's have a whole game where we're talking to each other. And then we kind of forget sometimes to roll dice, even for whole campaigns.
Well, I mean, that was a Vampire campaign though.
Yeah. So that's something too, is if you love the minutia of the rules and you want to deep dive into a crunchy RPG system where everything is measured and you have really well balanced or thought out discipline or abilities going back and forth, like Vampire's maybe not the best game for you.
No, a lot of Vampire is your imagination and what the DM is, allowing you to do. You do and you don't. You have abilities that, are spelled out for you what they're capable of. But I feel like there's a lot more chance for you to go in there and be like, well, what if I want to tweak this one thing just a little bit? And, it makes sense most of the time. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I just feel like it's more, you have open worlds and really open worlds. And I always feel like Vampire is a really open world where D&D's got a bit more structure to it.
Yeah. To jump back 1 second, if you find yourself looking through the spell list and you favor spells like command and illusion, where you get more, it requires more input and you have to manipulate what you can do to try to convince the situation, the Vampire is very much for you. That is the type of thing where all the vampiric abilities, aside from a handful that are just like, you're stronger, you're faster. Most of them are, you're going to have to think of creative ways to do that. And this is the game that pays off.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the way you do something can have a big effect as well.
So I guess to back up a little bit, what type of stories does Vampire the Masquerade lend itself to? Type of fantasies. A lot of times when we're talking about TTRPGs, role-playing systems, we talk about the type of fantasy that the rule system is designed in order to lend itself to. So heroic fantasy, Blades in the Dark, you're going to tell like a dark kind of, group-oriented story. So what do you think is like the vampire story?
Well, I guess clarify.
Oh, I guess that's a good point. There is no the vampire story.
Yeah.
What are the types of stories do you think that Vampire allows you to tell? I mean, I think we have a couple of good examples.
So, in my opinion, the way that I really enjoy Vampire would be RPG Columbo in a lot of ways. Because I feel like there's a mystery, there's something going on, behind the scenes that you're not really sure of. Yes, you might have some straightforward missions that you're doing, but why are you doing these missions? Who are these people that showed up? Why are they there? Why, or were they surprised you were there? Why were they not surprised that you started doing some really screwed up stuff like, jumping 30 feet through the air or stuff like that? Like, why is the church here? Why are they glowing? Like that. That stuff is really interesting to me. And again, you can do that stuff with D&D, but it's not that focused. I feel like D&D, if you don't have a combat happen, within the first 30 minutes, like, oh, you're not playing D&D. Where a Vampire, it's like, we just went there and talked to the guys and everything's cool now. So they're not going to be on our turf anymore? No, they're not going to be on your turf anymore. What are they going to be doing? I don't know. Maybe they learned how to breathe water. Otherwise, they're never going to show up again.
Yes, murder hobo is definitely a thing.
Yeah.
With repercussions.
Yes, repercussions. Always repercussions.
But yeah, also I think the rule system does support this. You're right. The rule system also, like, for example, when you are talking to that person and convincing them to not be on your turf, it isn't a persuasion check.
No.
You're talking about there's different stats for manipulation, for,
intimidation,
investigation. Like, it's not just a skill set where you're looking up some skill. Your core vampire stats go from 6 attributes to 9 because 3 of them are social.
Yes.
So baked into the rule set is essentially support for more social play. I think we can both agree on that one. And that can work to your detriment too if you want to play a character who is
not social.
Not social. You may run around being really good at, hey, I got these claws and I could fuck a person up. But like you said, everybody else in the game might be the type to tell you what to do. And that's not fun sometimes.
And not to say that there's situations where a person walks up and just talks to you and says like, hey, I don't think you should be doing this. And like, you're dead set on doing this. It doesn't mean that them talking to you is going to convince you not to do it. But there are abilities that take that option out of your hands.
Yes.
And that's fun, especially when you do it in a way where the person doesn't realize that's what you did.
Vampire absolutely can give in to the fantasy of being Dracula, of being that charismatic, controlling persona. You do need to establish pretty clear-cut social contract rules with the DM and with the party, but when those rules are in play, some amazing things can happen. Some very fun shenanigans that allow you to do some interesting things.
But with everything that we're saying, we're not saying that you can't play the rough and tumble tough guy. You absolutely can. Just expect. I guess that's where the whole thing of a party comes together, where you have acquaintances. And again, this is pretty much the way that we've always played Vampire. Is there is no party. You have your acquaintances, and your acquaintances are the other people at the table. Like them or not, you were linked to those people somehow, be it, you were embraced around the same time, or your sires know each other, or they tasked you to go do something together.
You're a coterie.
Yes, you're a coterie, and you need those people to fill for your weaknesses. And, you have that face, but you also have the B.A. Baracus, in the background, and those are the people that you work with to do stuff. And, in D&D, I kind of feel like you're a company, you're a business, and your business is adventuring.
Yeah, it makes sense. That does make sense. The difference between, I think, a coterie and a D&D party is the D&D party has a purpose built into why they're together. And the coterie is really like, we are a lifeboat in the dark.
Yes. That's
and
very
so
good.
I want to go back and I want to support you even if I hate you, because I need you to support me in these things where all the other sharks are looking at us, and we need to go in size a little bit.
But the problem there becomes, hey, there's a lifeboat over there, and I kind of like those people a little more than I like you.
There's a party boat over there, and some of them got some great ideas,
And then that person leaves your coterie for a little while, and then suddenly they come back and they're like, yeah, I like your boat better. Sorry, I didn't mean it.
Let's agree to disagree.
Please let me back on before the sharks eat me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. I do like that analogy.
It's like the boats are full of sharks.
Yes. It's sharks on sharks on sharks.
Sharks all the way down.
So, yeah, I guess let's back up a little bit, get to the fantasy. Let's talk about what. Yeah. So if you are a vampire, what does that mean, right? And we all know. Let's just skip over like you drink blood. Yeah. You're undead. We kind of get that given. Vibe. We know there. But like, what is different when you wake up as a vampire or the character that you're playing? Like, what kind of things do you think that are the major touchstones beyond the obvious?
For them to have the realization that there was something in the dark all along.
Oh, that's a good one. The pulling of the veil kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's right. So then as a vampire, you become aware of all the hidden things,
Mm-hmm.
all the different parts of society that people try to hide or organizations hide so that mortals can go about their lives blissfully unaware that they're being hunted at all the times.
And waking up as a vampire and realizing fairly quickly that you're not the scariest thing in the dark either.
Yeah, which is a great duality because in the beginning you do feel like you are.
Yes.
Someone can shoot you and you can shrug it off because it doesn't matter to your dead body.
Right.
You get crazy abilities where you can turn into mist and move really quick and cast blood sorceries and look at people and tell them what to do. But then you realize that for all your abilities, it just gets so much worse.
Yeah. And it compounds itself because it's not just older, stronger vampires. It's other creatures that exist because the whole world of darkness is much more than just vampire. It's just the most popular part of it, I feel.
Oh, yeah. And it's probably the best grounding place to start.
Yeah.
If you start with one of the other types of games, you're going to have a very different opinion of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you get into werewolves, you get into mages, you get into changeling. What's the spirits?
Wraith,
yes.
So one thing to understand, and we will talk this in future sessions, is that the world of darkness has changed drastically over the years, and we do have we are rooted in an edition that we're not actually talking about. So
Correct.
As we go through, we do have to apologize. Sometimes we will catch ourselves talking about things that are not in V5, but they probably will be someday.
And I mean, really looking at the rule sets for a lot of this stuff, it seems to me like you can probably tack those things into V5 relatively easy. But you know,
in case each their own. One of your players wants to play a demon, it's like very rare and hidden fucking book from 20 years ago that he suddenly brings up and wants to play. I am not talking about anybody specific, am I?
Drake.
Yeah. But yeah, so absolutely. And I'm sure as time goes on, Paradox is already releasing. They have Hunter, they have Werewolf. They're going to probably end up releasing Mage pretty soon.
Yeah, I feel like those are probably their top 3 after Vampire.
Because you got to get the supernatural trifecta, and then you have to get the hunters of them.
Yes.
And that pretty much puts you into a good place to tell good stories.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe because it is Vampire the Masquerade instead of Requiem, maybe we'll see Mummy, which I don't think anybody wanted to play.
Yeah. I didn't even know that was a thing.
It was. The 90s were a weird time, okay? Like
Vampire or World of Darkness Mummy. I mean, how does that even work?
It basically, interestingly enough, you play a campaign that takes place in Cairo and involves Setites.
Oh, my favorite clan, by the way.
Wonder why.
Setites did nothing wrong.
Oh, wow. I wonder if anybody get that joke. We think Vampire is very fun.
Mm-hmm.
We think this is probably one of the easiest games to get into, and we think you should play it if you're still listening to us, and God help you if you are. We want to tell you about our times playing Vampire, like things that we really like to do. I can tell you right off the bat that one of the worst things you can do is play a character that's handicapped by his humanity.
Yeah, that was dumb. I mean, that was if you ever play a game and someone does that, you know, just slap them and be like, no, that's not what this is. You are not a person. You are a creature, and you don't want to be a person anymore. I mean, maybe you do, but not in this context.
No, and definitely not at the point of using it as a mechanic that threatens things. So my introduction to the session, I made 2 mistakes. One, I very dumbly named a character probably the second most obvious name. I could have named him Vladimir, so that would have been worse, but like otherwise it was like Drake, because Drake's a great name. Drake has no connection to any famous vampires. It's not short for anything.
Yeah, I mean, a Drake isn't a dragon or anything like that.
Thought, hey, I'll just play a character. But the second mistake that I made was the fact that, I heard that, hey, if a vampire raises his humanity high enough, in other words, his moral compass turned into a game mechanic, then maybe he could do some cool stuff like turn back into a human. And then I got punished for it for 6 months in a row.
Yeah, because it's a mechanic that exists, but it's a mechanic that's like a generational thing where it takes very long time to actually do, and pretty much handicaps you from doing anything besides just being a guy.
Now, humanity specifically, actually, I think humanity is in Vampire the Masquerade. It's a little bit different in Masquerade versus Requiem, and we're not going to dive deep into the rules yet. That's going to be far down the road. But think about, there is always a part of your character's life path is a struggle between the beast, the part inside that just wants to feed and, act essentially as the feral wild animal you are, and what's left of your humanity. And that does play into the mechanics. It does affect your gameplay. It is something that you need to wrestle with on a regular basis. If you decide that you're only going to go one direction in that way, you don't play with that mechanic anymore.
Yeah.
Your choices are limited because everything you do affects it one way or another. Like, oh, hey, I want to help this person, but in doing so, I will slightly do a bad thing. Oh, I can't do that because I'm a saint.
So I'm just going to stand here and watch it happen. And somehow that's better.
Meanwhile, another member of the party is going the other direction. He's like, I'm going to rip a kid's head off. Yay.
In front of his mom. Oh, man, she's freaking out. Well, better get somebody to dominate her to make her calm down. Hey, guy that's trying to raise his humanity, you saw this horrible thing I did. Why don't you help her?
I got this. Let me convince this poor woman that everything's okay and she should just go to the police station and just let them take care of her. What could go wrong?
What did go wrong?
She walked out into the street and got hit by a bus.
Oh, that's terrible. That's not something a good person would do.
Damn, I was an asshole.
And thus the birth of two of the gods in our campaign.
Pretty much.
That existed for 20 years now.
Yeah.
Neither of them were my character, by the way.
No, your character is... your characters serve other purposes in my games.
Yes.
So yeah, if you haven't... We are an active playing group, and we have a long history, and as a long history tends to do it, and infects and affects all the choices you make in current games. Sometimes you make references to the old things, so that's fun too.
I mean, when you've been playing this long, all you have are memories.
Let's sigh. Les wouf, les sigh. Yeah. Wow, I don't know if we're doing a good job selling the game.
I think we are. I think the game appeals to a certain person, though. Not everyone's going to like it. I guarantee that. There's going to be people that just want to sit down and, go through a dungeon, and that's not what Vampire is. Vampire is a very social game that happens to have fighting in it.
Yes.
It can be fun. The fights can be fun. Everybody has a role. Everybody can do something, but that's not the focus. And for a new DM, it might not be the game. You're going to want someone that knows the rules and has played it before, or be prepared to have a slow time of it at first.
Yeah, it also lends itself a lot more to needing you to do some world creation.
Yes.
D&D attracts a lot of people who want to build worlds, fantastical worlds, and right there with you. It's great. But there's a lot to be said that you should be reactionary in building off the players at your table. Vampire, you need to set up some ground rules.
Yes.
You need to set up some powerful people in the city right away. You need to set up some people that they're going to interact with, bounce off of, struggle with, and it kind of requires you to write. But it's super easy to write because all those things are sitting outside your doorstep. You just have to darken them a little bit, make them a little more sinister.
And the big thing to realize is, at least if you're playing a modern campaign, a modern time setting, all those things that exist right now that aid police officers and, other people in reporting something happening, cell phones, those things exist. So where in D&D, it's like, we did this horrible thing, but, we murdered everybody in this town. Eventually somebody's going to show up and be like, oh my God, someone murdered everybody in this town. And, it's a thing, but like, you're 2-3 towns over. This one, it's like, yeah, you murdered everybody in the town, and like 3 people recorded it on their cell phones. And now it's not just that the police are after you, but you just alerted, higher authorities that vampires exist in this place. You just basically announced that, the other people that announced to the other people that you're attached to that might know you that you did something stupid. They might come after you. Like there's consequences for what you do, where D&D is a lot of murder hobo, depending upon the DM, but
Yeah.
that's consequences are real. That's what I like about Vampire. Sometimes
Yes.
the consequences are more fun than the actual action in itself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It should also be said that as far as the buy-in to play Vampire, it's actually almost non-existent in
it's
comparison
dead simple
to D&D.
Yeah.
So you're going to need someone who has essentially the rulebook or has access to the PDF of the rulebook. By this time, there are 5 different versions of it, so you could go look up one of the other ones.
Yep.
You just need to basically help, as the storyteller, so if we say DM, it's storyteller.
Yes.
Forgive us for that one. As a storyteller, you can help everybody make the characters. They don't have this giant list of spells and things that they can you don't need an app to trap.
No.
And it's all
one sheet of paper.
Yeah, and then you just get some dice. It's a D10 system. It's a pool system. So you roll dice and you count how many successes you get. Really simple. So simple that a lot of people like us start playing basically in the living room instead of at the kitchen table.
Yep.
You're kicked
because there's no miniatures.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose you could still do miniatures if you wanted to, but
you describe a super complicated gunfight, but it's not that granular anyway.
No.
So it's just there's kind of less of a reason to do that.
Yes.
It also lends itself to do something that we're not going to be talking about that much on our podcast because we don't understand it or we haven't done it, which is LARPing or live action play. It's very popular for people who are into this stuff to jump into that. And if you're one of those people, feel free to let us know how awesome that is. And we'll probably never do it, but
yeah. No hate or anything. It's just not what we're interested in.
Yeah, it's fortunately some of us find it, a little too difficult to be normal people, and we like to sit around a table and pretend that we're vampires and creepy characters. So for all those reasons, I think it's a great game to get into.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great game to get people who don't normally play Vampire in, or don't normally play RPGs or TTRPGs.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are going to be definitely waiting. They want their first outing to be the high fantasy sword sorcery. But most people, if you tell them, hey, just go and take a person off TV that you find is interesting.
Yeah. I mean, literally you can do that if you just, a character from a book or something and now they're a vampire, just that. And as far as world building and stuff, the publishers have done you a solid. And a lot of that world building already exists. You can dive right in to playing with an already established, city, town, whatever, with all of the characters that really exist there, should exist there, the important ones anyway. You just have to do some reading and it's all there for you already. The books that exist for it are very in-depth. They have a lot of detail and they're good reads. They're interesting.
Yeah. And that's the main focus here that we're intending to go into is we're hoping to have discussions about those exact things with you guys as time goes on, kind of both to educate and to learn ourselves as we dive into kind of the long history of this IP.
Yes, that is the word.
So I guess as a kind of a wrap up, there are some examples out there if you're interested in seeing people play this. Some big ones like, for example, Paradox Interactive, I think sponsored LA by Night. It's a pretty good romp through the modern vampire system. Mm-hmm. There's also some video games out there that you could play like Vampire Masquerade, which is
bit older,
and they're coming out with Bloodlines too.
Yes.
So those are probably great places to dive into and get some of the more esoteric parts of it, the weird kind of specific clan stuff that we'll talk to later on. Not to jump around too much, but there's also Seattle by Night, which is the Penny Arcade guys playing it. Might be a little bit more on the goofy side and less like drama kids. Like LA by Night gets a little...
The production values are great. you don't need to go that far.
No. And then, as I said, you don't need an app, but actually, hey, Paradox Interactive made an app. There's actually one called Vampire Nexus, and it's trying very hard to be D&D Beyond.
Vampire Nexus. Find on your app store now.
Oh, yeah. And then, of course, there are a bunch of different YouTube channels where people will go into deep clan lore, which we'll be kind of talking about in later episodes, but we'll probably never go as deep as some people out there. Leave that to the experts.
I'm sure most of what we're going to say is going to be wrong, so take a lot of that with a grain of salt.
This is great. I'm hoping it's right. So we should get all that attention on us. Well, these guys don't know.
You guys are wrong about it. Where are we cool?
Yeah,
let's talk about it.
Let's get it. So yeah, if we haven't scared you guys away, play Vampire. It's good.
Yeah,
it's fun. You'll get to have somebody creepily describe how you feed on people. That's one of the
which we've always done. The first time is very descriptive, and then after that, you just did it.
See that when you had your 15th hobo,
or your
7th college kid, who cares, or
your 100th rat,
100,000 rats. Well, I think that kind of wraps up our first foray into this little topic. Anything else?
No,
we need to get to at the end of this.
Nope. No, I think we're good.
All right, cool. Well, we don't have a formal wrap up, so go.
Yeah, outro music.